Hello, and thank you for watching the SMU Cox MBA Application FAQ webinar. My name is Brett Powell, and I'm the Assistant Director of Full-Time and Fast-Track MBA Admissions here at SMU Cox. We on the admissions team understand that the MBA application process can be a daunting one, especially if you are applying to several different programs, each with their own set of application nuances, deadlines, and so on. So this webinar is just a quick overview of some of the frequently asked questions we receive about our application here at SMU Cox. This presentation is tailored specifically to our program, so please bear that in mind as you follow along. We'll briefly touch on major application components and what some commonly asked questions are in each of those areas. After the presentation, if you have any other questions that haven't been addressed, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're always happy to answer any more questions you might have. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So your resume is a major component of an MBA application as it highlights your professional experiences thus far. At Cox, we are looking for what we call a results-oriented resume. Now, what do we mean by that? At Cox, we're looking for as much data as you're able to point to about your individual impact at your organization or company. Did you increase sales by a certain percentage in your department? Did you implement a new process that saved X amount of hours per week? How did you help improve or streamline existing approaches? Essentially, if you can quantify something that you've done professionally, we would like you to include that in your resume. Numbers are really helpful in understanding what you've accomplished in your functional role at your company or organization. Space is usually at a premium for resumes, so we do recommend that everything you include is intentional and impactful. We're very excited to ask you more questions that are specific to individual projects or experiences in your admissions interview. Transcripts. We do not require official transcripts or score reports for our application process. Now, if an offer of admission is made and you accept it later on, we will require those official documents, but we recommend that you wait until later in the admissions process to solicit those official copies. We do require that you upload transcripts for any institution where you earned more than 12 credit hours. So this means if you studied abroad for a summer, or maybe you took classes at a community college for dual credit in high school, if you earned more than 12 credit hours, 12 or more credit hours, we will require those transcripts, even if those classes are listed on the transcript from your graduating institution. Transcripts should also be final, meaning that they show all your conferred degrees as well as a final cumulative GPA. For those applicants that have graduated from an international institution, please have all transcripts translated into English. Typically, we don't require any external certification of international degrees, such as WES certification, but in the event that the admissions committee does require further confirmation of your degree, we will contact you separately to resolve that. Now, in terms of entrance exams, we accept either the GMAT or GRE here at SMU Cox, as long as those tests have been taken within the last 5 years. We do calculate score validity based on the date of your application submission and not the term of enrollment. So, for example, if you were targeting fall 2018 entry for the full-time MBA program and you took the GMAT in November of 2012, that score would be valid for our application process any time prior to November of 2017. From an admissions standpoint, we don't have any preference on which exam you take, whether the GMAT or the GRE. However, if you are targeting post-MBA roles in certain industries, namely management consulting or investment banking, we do recommend that you take the GMAT instead of the GRE. And this is because these industries utilize the GMAT in their recruiting and hiring processes. These are really the only two industries that exhibit a major preference toward the GMAT. And as I alluded, this is largely because these are very competitive roles on the MBA level, and the firms and companies that are hiring look for candidates with very high scores, usually at 680 and above, but that does depend on the company or firm. There are multiple sections to both the GMAT and GRE, but for the admissions process, we're going to look at your overall score. We do pay a pretty close attention to your quantitative section. That's because MBA programs are rigorously quantitative, and that quant section is going to be the best indicator of how you're going to perform in that quant coursework. So we do look at that pretty closely as well as the overall score, which is what we take into account for admissions overall, though. We do not superscore if you submit more than one test, meaning we will not average different sections for different score sections from different tests to give you a higher overall composite. It's just the highest overall test score we will consider. But for more information on our average GMAT, GRE ranges for the program, we definitely would encourage you to check out our website. If you go to coxmba.com, you can look at our admissions profile for the last incoming class of the MBA program to see how competitive your GMAT or GRE score is. While we do not have minimum GMAT or GRE score requirements to apply to the program, we do require a minimum score for all English language proficiency exams for those whose first language is not English. You can see here on the screen the minimum required scores for the tests that we accept. We do accept the TOEFL, IELTS, and the Pearson test of English. All of those within the last 2 years, that will be the time frame we need to accept valid scores. Now, depending on your professional or academic experience, you may qualify for an English proficiency test waiver. So you can see those outlined here. If you earned your undergrad degree from an institution where English was the primary language of instruction, if you've lived and worked in the U.S. or another English-speaking country like the United Kingdom, for example, for 2 out of the past 4 years, or if you scored at or above the 80th percentile of the verbal section of the GRE or GMAT. If you meet any of these criteria, we ask that you please upload supporting documentation. So, for example, if English was the primary language of instruction at your undergrad, we ask that you upload a copy of a transcript, certificate, or another document that states that English was indeed that language of instruction. There's no need to contact us separately on this matter, though, unless you have questions or need some clarification. So our essay questions are very brief by design here at Cox. We recently changed them for this admissions cycle. We want you to be concise and thoughtful in your answers. So we have 3 essay questions, each with a 250-word limit. We do ask that you please observe that limit and not exceed the 250 words. The essays simply offer insight to the committee or the admissions team members into your personality and your motivations for applying to business school. They also serve as a jumping off point, in a sense, for an admissions interview. So being succinct in answering those questions is very important. There is an optional essay available to you as an outlet to explain any component of your candidacy that you feel is not otherwise represented in your application. This might be an employment gap, or maybe if you were withdrawn for some classes for a semester in your undergrad, or any personal concerns that you would like the admissions committee to know. Not an opportunity to restate your interest in the program or bolster other areas of your application. We really only recommend it for those areas if it's not otherwise represented in your application. We do not require letters of recommendation at Cox. Instead, we ask for the contact information of 2 professional references that can really speak to your work-related skills and abilities. So this is somebody like a manager, a current boss, maybe a very close colleague. We do not always reach out to the references you list in the application. So there's no need to put those individuals on high alert or to notify them to be on the lookout for contact from us for any reason. If the admissions committee deems it necessary to reach out for more information regarding your background or your profile, we will always contact you first before reaching out to those references. If you would prefer to list a reference that's not a current supervisor, maybe you're not quite ready to tell them you're applying to business school, you're certainly welcome to utilize a former supervisor, manager, colleague, a client if that's appropriate for your role. But please do not use character references, personal friends, or academic references. The one caveat to the academic references would be unless you currently work in an academic or maybe research setting, that would be appropriate. And just to touch on deadlines and a few other considerations, at Cox we do have 5 rounds of deadlines. This allows us to review applications, make admissions decisions, and notify candidates on more of a rolling basis rather than waiting for a single date to release all of the admissions decisions. But we do receive a lot of questions about which round is best to apply in for candidates. And what we generally recommend is that you apply when you feel that you're best able to represent your candidacy. We do give priority scholarship consideration for round 1 applicants. However, this doesn't mean we're completely exhausted of award resources by round 2, for example. We usually have scholarships available through our round 4 deadline in the spring. So we definitely would discourage anyone from rushing through an application or rushing through GMAT prep, for example, just to meet that round 1 or round 2 deadline. We do not have any quotas per round, and there's no one round in particular where admission would be easier to gain in any sense. We admit exceptional qualified candidates as we receive applications, and we do award merit-based scholarship accordingly. One other consideration, though, in terms of the rounds, though, is if you would like to be considered for our Cox Distinguished Scholars Program, we do ask that you please submit your application by the round 3 deadline. But beyond those 2 points, there's really no advantage or disadvantage to applying in any given round. We've structured our process to provide flexibility for applicants. So if you do have a question about rounds or any concerns, please feel free to reach out to us so we can chat about that. This concludes our presentation about the application process. If you would like to apply now, you can access our application online at coxmba.com. We do not charge an application fee for any of the graduate programs here at Cox, so we certainly hope that you will choose to submit that application soon. And of course, if you have any other questions, you're welcome to contact us by email at coxmbainfo@smu.edu. And we thank you again for watching. We look forward to receiving your application